of user data. We also hope you can help clear up the considerable confusion that exists about how people's Facebook data are used outside of the platform. We hope you can help Congress, but more importantly, the American people, better understand how Facebook user information has been accessed by third parties, from Cambridge Analytica and CubeU to the Obama for America presidential campaign. And we ask that you share any suggestions you have for ways policymakers can help reassure our constituents that data they believe was only shared with friends or certain groups remains private to those circles. As policymakers, we want to be sure that consumers are adequately informed about how their online activities and information are used. These issues apply not just to Facebook, but equally to the other internet-based companies that collect information about users online. So, Mr. Zuckerberg, your expertise in this field is without rival. So thank you for joining us today to help us learn more about these vital matters and to answer our questions. With that, I yield now to the gentleman from New Jersey, the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, my friend Mr. Pallone, for 5 minutes for purposes of an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I also want to thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg, for being here today. Facebook has become integral to our lives. We don't just share pictures of our families. We use it to connect for school, to organize events, and to watch baseball games. Facebook has enabled everyday people to spur national political movements. Most of us in Congress use Facebook to reach our constituents in ways that were unimaginable 10 years ago, and this is certainly a good thing. But it also means that many of us can't give it up easily. Many businesses have their only web presence on Facebook, and for professions like journalism, people's jobs depend on posting on the site. And this ubiquity comes with a price. For all the good it brings, Facebook can be a weapon for those like Russia and Cambridge Analytica that seek to harm us and hack our democracy. Facebook made it too easy for a single person, in this instance Alexander Kogan, to get extensive personal information about 87 million people. He sold this data to Cambridge Analytica, who used it to try to sway the 2016 presidential election for the Trump campaign. And Facebook made itself a powerful tool for things like voter suppression, in part by opening its platform to app developers with little or no oversight. But it gets worse. The fact is, no one knows how many people have access to the Cambridge Analytica data, and no one knows how many other Cambridge Analyticas are still out there. Shutting down access to data to third parties isn't enough, in my opinion. Facebook and many other companies are doing the same thing. They're using people's personal information to do highly targeted product and political advertising. And Facebook is just the latest in a never-ending string of companies that vacuum up our data but fail to keep it safe. And this incident demonstrates yet again that our laws are not working. Making matters worse, Republicans here in Congress continue to block or even repeal the few privacy protections we have. In this era of nonstop data breaches, last year, Republicans eliminated existing privacy and data security protections at the FCC. And their justification that those protections were not needed because the Federal Trade Commission has everything under control. Well, this latest disaster shows just how wrong the Republicans are. The FTC used every tool Republicans have been willing to give it, and those tools weren't enough. And that's why Facebook acted like so many other companies and reacted only when it got bad press. We all know the cycle by now. Our data is stolen, the company looks the other way, eventually reporters find out, publish a negative story, and the company apologizes, and Congress then holds a hearing, and then nothing happens. By not doing its job, this Republican-controlled Congress has become complicit in this nonstop cycle of privacy by press release, and the cycle must stop because the current system is broken. So I was happy to hear that Mr. Zuckerberg conceded that his industry needs to be regulated, and I agree. We need comprehensive privacy and data security legislation. We need baseline protections that stretch from internet service providers to data brokers to app developers and to anyone else who makes a living off our data. We need to figure out how to make sure these companies act responsibly even before the press finds out. But while securing our privacy is necessary, it's not sufficient. We need to take steps immediately to secure our democracy. We can't let what happened in 2016 happen again, and to do that, we need to learn how Facebook was caught so flat-footed in 2016. How was it so blind to what the Russians and others were doing on its systems? Red flags were everywhere. Why didn't anyone see them, or were they ignored? So today's hearing is a good start, But we also need to hold additional hearings where we hold accountable executives from other tech companies, internet service providers, data brokers, and anyone else that collects our information. Now, Congresswoman Schakowsky from Illinois and I introduced a bill last year that would require companies to implement baseline data security standards, and I plan to work with my colleagues to draft additional legislation. But I have to say, Mr. Chairman, it's time for this committee and this Congress to pass comprehensive legislation to prevent incidents like this in the future. My great fear is that we have this hearing today, there's a lot of press attention, and Mr. Zuckerberg, appreciate your being here once again, but if all we do is have a hearing and then nothing happens, then that's not accomplishing anything. And I know I sound very critical of the Republicans and their leadership on these privacy issues, but I've just seen it over and over again that we have the hearings and nothing happens. So excuse me for being so pessimistic, Mr. Chairman, but that's where I am. I yield back.
I think I thank the gentleman for his opening comments. That we now conclude with member opening statements. The chair would like to remind members that pursuant to the committee rules, all members' opening statements will be made part of the record. Today we have Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, Chairman and CEO of Facebook Incorporated, here to testify before the full Energy and Commerce Committee. Mr. Zuckerberg will have the opportunity to give a 5-minute opening statement, followed by a round of questioning from our members. So thank you for taking the time to be here, and you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Walden, Ranking Member Pallone, and members of the committee, we face a number of important issues around privacy, security, and democracy. And you will rightfully have some hard questions for me to answer. But before I talk about the steps we're taking to address them, I want to talk for a minute about how we got there. Facebook is an idealistic and optimistic company. For most of our existence, we focused on all the good that connecting people can bring. And as Facebook has grown, people everywhere have gotten a powerful new tool for staying connected to the people they care about most, for making their voices heard, and for building community and businesses. Just recently, we've seen the Me Too movement and the March for Our Lives organized at least part on Facebook. After Hurricane Harvey, people came together and raised more than $20 million for relief. And there are more than 70 million small businesses around the world that use our tools to grow and create jobs. But it's clear now that we didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, foreign interference in elections, and hate speech, as well as developers and data privacy. We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake. It was my mistake, and I'm sorry. I started Facebook, I run it, and at the end of the day, I'm responsible for what happens here. So now, we have to go through every part of our relationship with people to make sure that we're taking a broad enough view of our responsibility. It's not enough to just connect people. We have to make sure that those connections are positive. It's not enough to just give people a voice. We need to make sure that that voice isn't used to harm other people or spread misinformation. And it's not enough to just give people control of their information. We need to make sure that the developers who they share it with protect their information too. Across the board, we have a responsibility to not just give people tools, but to make sure that those tools are used for good. It's going to take some time to work through all the changes we need to make, but I'm committed to getting this right. And that includes the basic responsibility of protecting people's information, which we failed to do with Cambridge Analytica. So here are a few key things that we're doing to address this situation and make sure that this doesn't happen again. First, we're getting to the bottom of exactly what Cambridge Analytica did and telling everyone who may have been affected. What we know now is that Cambridge Analytica improperly obtained some information about millions of Facebook members by buying it from an app developer that people had shared it with. This information was generally information that people share publicly on their profile pages, like their name and profile picture and the list of pages that they follow. When we first contacted Cambridge Analytica, they told us that they had deleted the data. And then about a month ago, we heard a new report that suggested that this was not true. So now we're working with governments in the US, the UK, and around the world to do a full audit of what they've done and to make sure that they get rid of any data that they still have. Second, to make sure that no other app developers are out there misusing data, we're now investigating every single app that had access to a large amount of people's information on Facebook in the past. And if we find someone that improperly used data, we're going to ban them from our platform and tell everyone affected. Third, to prevent this from ever happening again, we're making sure developers can't access as much information going forward. The good news here is that we made some big changes to our platform in 2014 that would prevent this specific instance with Cambridge Analytica from happening again today. But there's more to do, and you can find more of the details of the other steps we're taking in the written statement I provided. My top priority has always been our social mission of connecting people, building community, and bringing the world closer together. Advertisers and developers will never take priority over that for as long as I'm running Facebook. I started Facebook when I was in college. We've come a long way since then. We now serve more than 2 billion people around the world, and every day, people use our services to stay connected with the people that matter to them most. I believe deeply in what we're doing, and I know that when we address these challenges, we'll look back and view helping people connect and giving more people a voice as a positive force in the world. I realize the issues we're talking about today aren't just issues for Facebook and our community, they're challenges for all of us as Americans. Thank you for having me here today, and I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg. I'll start out, we'll go into the questioning phase. We'll go back and forth as we always do. Remember, it's 4 minutes today, so we can get to everyone. Mr. Zuckerberg, you've described Facebook as a company that connects people and as a company that's idealistic and optimistic. I have a few questions about what other types of companies Facebook may be. Facebook has created its own video series starring Tom Brady that ran for 6 episodes and has over 50 million views. That's twice the number of the viewers that watched the Oscars last month. Also, Facebook's obtained exclusive broadcasting rights for 25 Major League Baseball games this season. Is Facebook a media company?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I consider us to be a technology company because the primary thing that we do is have engineers who write code and build products and services for other people. There are certainly other things that we do too. We do pay to help produce content. We build enterprise software, although I don't consider us an enterprise software company. We build planes to help connect people, and I don't consider ourselves to be an aerospace company. But overall, when people ask us if we're a media company, what I hear is, do we have a responsibility for the content that people share on Facebook? And I believe the answer to that question is yes.
All right, let me ask the next one. You can send money to friends on Facebook Messenger using a debit card or a PayPal account to, quote, split meals, pay rent, and more, close quote. People can also send money via Venmo or their bank app. Is Facebook a financial institution?
Mr. Chairman, I do not consider ourselves to be a financial institution, although you're right that we do provide tools for people to send money.
So you've mentioned several times that you started Facebook in your dorm room in 2004. 15 years, 2 billion users, and several, unfortunately, breaches of trust later. Is Facebook today the same kind of company you started with a harvard.edu email address?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think we've evolved quite a bit as a company. When I started it, I certainly didn't think that we would be the ones building this broad of a community around the world. I thought someone would do it. I didn't think it was going to be us. So we've definitely grown.
And you've recently said that you and Facebook have not done a good job of explaining what Facebook does. And so back in 2012 and 2013, when a lot of this scraping of user and friend data was happening, did it ever cross your mind that you should be communicating more clearly with users about how Facebook is monetizing their data? I understand that Facebook does not sell user data per se in the traditional sense, but it's also just as true that Facebook's user data is probably the most valuable thing about Facebook. In fact, it may be the only truly valuable thing about Facebook. Why wasn't explaining what Facebook does with users' data a higher priority for you as a co-founder and now as CEO?
Mr. Chairman, you're right that we don't sell any data, and I would say that we do try to explain what we do as time goes on. It's a broad system. You know, every day, about 100 billion times a day, people come to one of our products, whether it's Facebook or Messenger or Instagram or WhatsApp, to put in a piece of content, whether it's a photo that they want to share or a message they want to send someone, and every time there's a control right there about who you want to share it with. Do you want to share it publicly to broadcast it out to everyone? Do you want to share it with your friends, a specific group of people? Do you want to message it to just one person or a couple of people? That's the most important thing that we do, and I think that in the product that's quite clear. I do think that we can do a better job of explaining how advertising works. There is a common misperception, as you say, that is just reported, often keeps on being reported, that for some reason we sell data. I can't be clearer on this topic. We don't sell data. That's not how advertising works, and I do think we could probably be doing a clearer job explaining that given the misperceptions that are out there.
Given the situation, can you manage the issues that are before you, or does Congress need to intercede? I'm going to leave that because I'm over my time. That, and I want to flag an issue the Vietnam Veterans of America have raised too, and we'll get back with your staff on that about some fake pages that are up. But I want to stay on schedule. So with that, I'll yield to Mr. Pallone for 4 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Zuckerberg, you talked about how positive and optimistic you are, and I guess I'm sorry because I'm not. I don't have much faith in corporate America, and I certainly don't have much faith in their GOP allies here in Congress. I really look at everything that this committee does, or most of what this committee does, in terms of the right to know. In other words, I always fear that people, they go on Facebook, they don't necessarily know what's happening or what's going on with their data. And so to the extent that we could pass legislation, which I think we need, and you said that we probably should have some legislation, I want that legislation to give people the right to know, to empower them, to provide more transparency, I guess, is the best way to put it. So I'm looking at everything through that sort of lens. So just let me ask you 3 quick questions, and I'm going to ask it to answer yes or no because of the time. Yes or no, is Facebook limiting the amount or type of data Facebook itself collects or uses?
Congressman, yes, we limit a lot of the data that we collect and use.
But see, I don't see that in the announcements you've made. Like, you've made all these announcements the last few days about the changes you're going to make, and I don't really see how those announcements or changes limit the amount or type of data that Facebook collects or uses in an effective way. But let me go to the second one. Again, this is my concern that users currently may not know or take affirmative action to protect their own privacy. Yes or no, is Facebook changing any user default settings to be more privacy protective?
Congressman, yes. In response to these issues, we've changed a lot of the way that our platform works so that way developers can't get access to as much information.
But see, again, I don't see that in the changes that you propose. I don't really see any way that these user default settings, you're changing these user default settings in a way that is going to be more privacy protection. But let me protected. But let me go to the third one. Yes or no? Will you commit to changing all the user default settings to minimize, to the greatest extent possible, the collection and use of users' data? Can you make that commitment?
Congressman, we try to collect and give people the ability.
But I'd like you to answer yes or no, if you could. Will you make the commitment to changing all the user default settings to minimize, to the greatest extent possible, the collection and use of users' data? I don't think that's hard for you to say yes to, unless I'm missing something.
Congressman, this is a complex issue that I think deserves more than a one-word answer.
Well, again, that's disappointing to me because I think you should make that commitment, and maybe what we could do is follow up with you on this, if possible, if that's okay. We can do that follow-up?
Yes.
All right. Now, you said yesterday that each of us owns the content that we put on Facebook, and that Facebook gives some control to consumers over their content, but we know about the problems with Cambridge Analytica. I know you changed your rules in 2014 and again this week, but you still allow third parties to have access to personal data. How can consumers have control over their data when Facebook doesn't have control over the data itself? That's my concern. Last question.
Congressman, what we allow with our developer platform is for people to choose to sign into other apps and bring their data with them. That's something that a lot of people want to be able to do. The reason why we built the developer platform in the first place was because we thought it would be great if more experiences that people had could be more social. So if you could have a calendar that showed your friends' birthdays, if you could have an address book that had pictures of your friends in it, if you could have a map that showed your friends' addresses on it. In order to do that, you need to be able to sign into an app, bring some of your data and some of your friends' data, and that's what we built. Now, since then, we've recognized that that can be used for abuse too, so we've limited it so now people can only bring their data when they go to an app. But that's something that a lot of people do on a day-to-day basis, is sign into apps and websites with Facebook, and that's something that
we're going to have to.
Yeah, I know. I still think that there's not enough. People aren't empowered enough to really make those decisions in a positive way.
Chair now recognizes former chairman of the committee, Mr. Barton of Texas, for 4 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg, for being here. People need to know that you're here voluntarily. You're not here because you've been subpoenaed, so we appreciate that. Sitting behind you have a gentleman who used to be counsel for the committee, Mr. Jim Barnett, and if he's affiliated with Facebook, you've got a good one. If he's not, he's just got a great seat. I don't know what it is. I'm going to read you a question that I was asked. I got this through Facebook, and I've got dozens like this. So my first question, please ask Mr. Zuckerberg, why is Facebook censoring conservative bloggers such as Diamond and Silk? Facebook called them unsafe to the community. That is ludicrous. They hold conservative views. That isn't unsafe. What's your response to?
Congressman, in that specific case, our team made an enforcement error, and we have already gotten in touch with them to reverse it.
Well, Facebook does tremendous good. When I met you in my office 8 years ago, you don't remember that, but I've got a picture of you when you had curly hair, and Facebook had 500 million users. Now it's got over 2 billion. That's a success story in anybody's book. It's such an integral part of certainly young Americans' lives that you need to work with Congress and the community to ensure that it is a neutral, safe, and to the largest extent possible, private platform. Do you agree with that?
Congressman, I do agree that we should work to give people the fullest free expression that is possible. That's what, when I talk about giving people a voice, that's what I care about.
Okay. Let's talk about children. Children can get a Facebook account of their own, I believe, starting at age 13. Is that not correct?
Congressman, that's correct.
Okay. Is there any reason that we couldn't have just a no data sharing policy, period, until you're 18? Just if you're a child with your own Facebook account, until you reach the age of 18, you know, you know, you can't share anything. It's their data, their picture. It doesn't go anywhere. Nobody gets to scrape it. Nobody gets to access it. It's absolutely, totally private. Well, for children, what's wrong with that?
Congressman, we have a number of measures in place to protect minors specifically. We make it so that adults can't contact minors who they aren't already friends with. We make it so that certain content that may be inappropriate for minors we don't show. The reality that we see is that teens often do want to share their opinions publicly. And that's a service that...
well, we would let them opt in to do that.
Yes, we do.
But don't, you know, unless they specifically allow it, then don't allow it. That's my point.
Congressman, every time that someone chooses to share something on Facebook, you go to the app, right there, it says, who do you want to share with? When you sign up for a Facebook account, it starts off sharing with just your friends. If you want to share it publicly, you have to specifically go and change that setting to be sharing publicly.
But I'm about out of time. I actually use Facebook, and you know, I know if you take the time, you can go to your privacy and click on that, and you can go to your settings and click on that. You can pretty well set up your Facebook account to be almost totally private, but you have to really work at it. And my time's expired. Hopefully we can do some questions in writing as a follow-up.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Rush, for 4 minutes for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, welcome. In the 1960s, our government, acting through the FBI and local police, maliciously tricked individuals and organizations into participating in something called COINTELPRO, which was a counterintelligence program where they tracked and shared information about civil rights activists, their political, social, civic, even religious affiliations. And I personally was a victim of COINTELPRO. Your organization, your methodology, in my opinion, is similar. You're truncating the basic rights of the American promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness by the wholesale invasion and manipulation of their right to privacy. Mr. Zuckerberg, what is the difference between Facebook's methodology and the methodology of the American political pariah, J. Edgar Hoover?
Congressman, this is an important question because I think people often ask what the difference is between surveillance and what we do, and I think that the difference is extremely clear, which is that on Facebook, you have control over your information. The content that you share, you put there. You can take it down at any time. The information that we collect, you can choose to have us not collect. You could delete any of it, and of course you can leave Facebook if you want. I know of no surveillance organization that gives people the option to delete the data that they have or even know what they're collecting.
Mr. Zuckerberg, you should be commended that Facebook has grown so big so fast. It is no longer the company that you started in your dorm room. Instead, it's one of great American success stories. That much influence comes with enormous social responsibility of which you have failed to act and to protect and to consider. Should Facebook, by default, protect users' information? Why is the onus on the user to opt in to privacy and security settings?
Congressman, as I said, every time that a person chooses to share something on Facebook, they're proactively going to the service and choosing that they want to share a photo, write a message to someone. And every time there's a control right there, not buried in settings somewhere, but right there when they're posting about who they want to share it with.
Mr. Zuckerberg, I only have a few more seconds. In November 2017, ProPublica reported that Facebook was still allowed housing and advertisers to systematically exclude advertisements to specific racial groups and explicitly prohibited practice. This is just one example where Facebook has allowed race to improperly play a role. What has Facebook done, and what are you doing to ensure that your targeted advertisements and other components of your platform are in compliance with federal laws such as the Civil Rights Act of 1968?
Congressman, since we learned about that, we removed the option for advertisers to exclude ethnic groups from targeting.
When did you do that?
The gentleman's time has expired. We need to go now to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton, for 4 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the committee. A number of times in the last day or two, you've indicated that, in fact, you're now open to some type of regulation, and we know, of course, that you're the dominant social media platform without any true competitor, in all frankness, and you have hundreds, if not thousands, of folks that are would be required to help navigate any type of regulatory environment. Some would argue that a more regulatory environment might ultimately stifle new platforms and innovators. Some might describe as desperately needed competition, i.e. regulatory complexity helps protect those folks like you. It could create a harmful barrier to entry for some startups, particularly ones that might want to compete with you. So should we policymakers up here be more focused on the needs of startups over large incumbents? And what kind of policy regulatory environment would you want instead of managing maybe a Fortune 500 company if you were launching a startup to take on the big guy?
Congressman, thank you. And let me say a couple of things on this. First, to your point about competition, the average American uses about 8 different apps to communicate and stay connected to people. So there's a lot of competition that we feel every day, and that's an important force that we definitely feel in running the company. Second, on your point about regulation, the internet is growing in importance around the world in people's lives, and I think that it is inevitable that there will need to be some regulation. So my position is not that there should be no regulation, but I also think that you have to be careful about what regulation you put in place for a lot of the reasons that you're saying. I think a lot of times regulation, by definition, puts in place rules that a company that is larger, that has resources like ours, can easily comply with, but that might be more difficult for a smaller startup to comply with. So I think that these are all things that need to be thought through very carefully when thinking through what rules we want to put in place.
To follow up a question that Mr. Barton asked about Silk and Diamond, I don't know whether you know about this particular case. I have a former state rep who's running for state senate. He's the former Michigan lottery commissioner, so he's a guy of fairly good political prominence. He announced for state senate just in the last week, and he had what I thought was a rather positive announcement, and I'll read to you precisely what it was. I'm proud to announce my candidacy for state senate. Lansing needs conservative West Michigan values, and as our next state senator, I will work to strengthen our economy, limit government, lower our auto insurance rates, balance the budget, stop sanctuary cities, pay down government debt, be a pro-life, pro-Second Amendment lawmaker, end. It was rejected, and the response from you all was it wasn't approved because it doesn't follow our advertising policies. We don't allow ads that contain shocking, disrespectful, or sensational content, including ads that depict violence or threats of violence. I'm not sure where the threat was based on what he tried to post.
Congressman, I'm not sure either. I'm not familiar with that specific case. It's quite possible that we made a mistake, and we'll follow up afterwards on that.
Okay.
Overall, I mean, we have, by the end of this year, we'll have about 20,000 people at the company who work on security and content review related issues, but there's a lot of content flowing through the systems and a lot of reports, and unfortunately, we don't always get these things right when people report it to us.
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from California, Ms. Eshoo, for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Zuckerberg. First, I believe that our democratic institutions are undergoing a stress test in our country. And I believe that American companies owe something to America. I think the damage done to our democracy relative to Facebook and its platform being weaponized are incalculable. Enabling the cynical manipulation of American citizens for the purpose of influencing an election is deeply offensive, and it's very dangerous. Putting our private information on offer without concern for possible misuses, I think, is simply irresponsible. I invited my constituents going into the weekend to participate in this hearing today by submitting what they want to ask you. And so my questions are theirs. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like unanimous consent to place all of their questions in the record.
Without objection.
So these are a series of just yes/no questions. Do you think you have a moral responsibility to run a platform that protects our democracy? Yes or no?
Congresswoman, yes.
Have users of Facebook who were caught up in the Cambridge Analytica debacle been notified?
Yes, we are starting to notify people this week. We started Monday, I believe.
Will Facebook offer to all of its users a blanket opt-in to share their privacy data with any third-party users?
Congresswoman, yes, that's how our platform works. You have to opt in to sign into any app before you use it.
Well, let me just add that it is a minefield in order to do that. And you have to make it transparent, clear, in pedestrian language, just once. This is what we will do with your data. Do you want this to happen or not? So I think that this is being blurred. I think you know what I mean by it. Are you aware of other third-party information mishandlings that have not been disclosed?
Congresswoman, no. Although we are currently going through the process of investigating every single
You're not
app
sure.
that had access to a large amount of data.
What does that mean?
It means that we're going to look into every app that had a large amount of access to data in the past before we lock down the platform.
You're not
imagine
aware.
that because there are tens of thousands of apps, we will find
All
some
right,
that
I only have 4
activity.
minutes.
And when we
Was
find
your
them-
data included in the data sold to the malicious third parties? Your personal data?
Yes.
It was. Are you willing to change your business model in the interest of protecting individual privacy?
Congresswoman, we have made and are continuing to make changes to reduce the amount of
No,
data.
are you
that-
willing to change your business model in the interest of protecting individual privacy?
Congresswoman, I'm not sure what that means.
Well, I'll follow up with you on it. When did Facebook learn that Cambridge Analytica's research project was actually for targeted psychographic political campaign work?
Congresswoman, it might be useful to clarify what actually happened here.
Well, no, I don't have time for a long answer, though. When did Facebook learn that? And when you learned it, did you contact their CEO immediately? And if not, why not?
Congresswoman, yes. When we learned in 2015 that a Cambridge University researcher associated with the academic institution that built an app that people chose to
We
share
know what
their data
happened with them, but I'm asking you.
Yes, I'm answering your question.
Right.
When we learned about that, we
So in
immediately...
2015, you learned about it?
Yes.
And you spoke to their CEO immediately?
We shut down the app.
Did you speak to
And
their
we
CEO
demanded-
immediately?
We got in touch with them, and we asked them we demanded that they delete any of the data that they had, and their chief data officer told us that they had.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank
Chair
you.
now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus, for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. Zuckerberg. Two things. First, I want to thank Facebook. You streamlined our congressional baseball game last year. We got the managers here, and I was told that because of that, we raised an additional $100,000 for DC literacy and feeding kids and stuff. So that's the other thing is I usually put my stuff up on the TV. I don't want to do it very much because it's my dad, and he'd be mad if he went international like you are. And he's been on Facebook for a long time. He's 88. It's been good for connecting with kids and grandkids. I just got my mother involved on an iPad, and because she can't handle a keyboard. And I did this last week. So that in this world activity, I still think there is a positive benefit for my parents to be engaged on this platform. So, but there's issues that's being raised today. And so I'm going to go into a couple of those. Facebook developed access to user and friend data back in, your main update was in 2014. So the question is, what triggered that update?
Congressman, this is an important question to clarify. So in 2007, we launched the platform in order to make it so that people could sign into other apps, bring some of their information, and some of their friends' information to have social experiences. This created a lot of innovative experiences, new games, companies like Zynga. There were companies that you're familiar with, like Netflix and Spotify, had integrations with this that allowed social experiences in their apps. But unfortunately, there were also a number of apps that use this for abuse, to collect people's data.
So if I can interrupt, it's just, you identified that there was possibly social scraping going on.
Yeah, there was abuse, and that's why in 2014, we took the step of fundamentally changing how the platform works. So now, when you sign into an app, you can bring your information, and if a friend has also signed into the app, then the app can know that you're friends, so you can have a social experience in that app. But when you sign into an app, it now no longer brings information from other people.
Yeah, let me go to your announcement of audits. Who's going to conduct an audit when we're talking about, are there other Cambridge Analytics out there?
Yes, Congressman, good question. So we're going to start by doing an investigation internally of every single app that had access to a large amount of information before we lock down the platform. If we detect any suspicious activity at all, we are working with third-party auditors. I imagine there will have to be a number of them because there are a lot of apps, and they will conduct the audit for us.
Yeah, I think we would hope that you would bring in a third party to help us clarify and have more confidence. The last question I have is, in yesterday's hearing, you talked a little about Facebook tracking in different scenarios, including logged off users. Can you please clarify us how that works, and how does tracking work across different devices?
Yes, Congressman, thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify that. So one of the questions is what information do we track and why about people who are not signed into Facebook? We track certain information for security reasons and for ads reasons. For security, it's to make sure that people who are not signed into Facebook can't scrape people's public information. You can, even when you're not signed in, you can look up the information that people have chosen to make public on their page because they wanted to share it with everyone, so there's no reason why you should have to be logged in. But nonetheless, we don't want someone to be able to go through and download every single public piece of information. Even if someone chose to make it public, that doesn't mean that it's good to allow someone to aggregate it. So even if someone isn't logged in, we track certain information like how many pages they're accessing as a security measure. The second thing that we do is we provide an ad network that third-party websites and apps can run in order to help them make money. And those ads, similar to what Google does and what the rest of the industry does, it's not limited to people who are just on Facebook. So for the purposes of that, we may also collect information to make it so that those ads are more relevant and work better on those websites. There's a control that for that second class of information around ad targeting, anyone can turn off, has complete control over it. For obvious reasons, we do not allow people to turn off the measurement that we do around security.
The gentleman's time has expired. We now turn to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Engel, for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, you have roots in my district, the 16th Congressional District of New York. I know that you attended Ardsley High School and grew up in Westchester County. As you know, Westchester has a lot to offer, and I hope that you might commit to returning to Westchester County, perhaps to do a forum on this and some other things. I hope you would consider that. We'll be in touch with you. But I know that Ardsley High School is very proud of you. You mentioned yesterday that Facebook was deceived by Alexander Kogan when he sold user information to Cambridge Analytica. Does Facebook, therefore, plan to sue Alexander Kogan, Cambridge University, or Cambridge Analytica, perhaps for unauthorized access to computer networks, exceeding access to computer networks, or breach of contract, and why or why not?
Congressman, it's something that we're looking into. We already took action by banning him from the platform, and we're going to be doing a full audit to make sure that he gets rid of all the data that he has as well. To your point about Cambridge University, what we've found now is that there's a whole program associated with Cambridge University where a number of researchers, not just Alexander Kogan, although to our current knowledge he's the only one who sold the data to Cambridge Analytica, there were a number of other researchers who were building similar apps. So we do need to understand whether there was something bad going on at Cambridge University overall that will require a stronger action from us.
You mentioned before in your remarks hate speech. We've seen the scale and reach of extremism balloon in the last decade, partially because of the expansion of social platforms, whether it's a white supremacist rally in Charlottesville that turned violent or to ethnic cleansing in Burma that resulted in the second largest refugee crisis in the world. Are you aware of any foreign or domestic terrorist organizations, hate groups, criminal networks, or other extremist networks that have scraped Facebook user data? And if they have, and if they do it in the future, how would you go about getting it back or deleting it?
Congressman, we're not aware of any specific groups like that that have engaged in this. We are, as I've said, conducting a full investigation of any apps that had access to a large amount of data, and if we find anything suspicious, we'll tell everyone affected. We do not allow hate groups on Facebook overall. So if there's a group that their primary purpose or a large part of what they do is spreading hate, we will ban them from the platform overall.
So do you adjust your algorithms to prevent individuals interested in violence or nefarious activities from being connected with other like-minded individuals?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you adjust your algorithms to prevent individuals interested in violence or bad activities from being connected with other like-minded individuals?
Congressman, yes. That's certainly an important thing that we need to do.
Okay, and finally, let me say this. Many of us are very angry about Russian influence in the 2016 presidential elections and Russian influence over our presidential elections. Does Facebook have the ability to detect when a foreign entity is attempting to buy a political ad? And is that process automated? Do you have procedures in place to inform key government players when a foreign entity is attempting to buy a political ad or when it might be taking other steps to interfere in an election?
Congressman, yes, this is an extremely important area. After we were slow to identify the Russian information operations in 2016, this has become a top priority for our company to prevent that from ever happening again. Especially this year in 2018, which is such an important election year with the US midterms, but also major elections in India, Brazil, Mexico, Hungary, Pakistan, and a number of other places. So we're doing a number of things that I'm happy to talk about or follow up with afterwards around deploying new AI tools that can proactively catch fake accounts that Russia or others might create to spread misinformation. And one thing that I'll end on here, just because I know we're running low on time, is since the 2016 election, there have been a number of significant elections, including the French presidential election, the German election, and last year the US Senate Alabama special election. And the AI tools that we deployed in those elections were able to proactively take down tens of thousands of fake accounts that may have been trying to do the activity that you're talking about. So our tools are getting better. For as long as Russia has people who are employed who are trying to perpetrate this kind of interference, it will be hard for us to guarantee that we're going to fully stop everything. But it's an arms race, and I think that we're making ground and are doing better and better and are confident about how we're going to be able to do it.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman of the Health Subcommittee, Dr. Burgess of Texas, for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to our witness for being here today. Mr. Chairman, I have a number of articles that I'm asking unanimous consent to insert into the record. I know I won't have time to get to all of my
Without
questions.
objection, and we put the slide up you requested.
And so I'm going to be submitting some questions for the record that are referencing these articles. One is Friended, How the Obama Campaign Connected with Young Voters by Michael Scherer. We already know how to protect ourselves from Facebook, and I hope I get this name right, Zeynep Tufekci. And It's Time to Break Up Facebook by Eric Wilson, who in the interest of full
Without
disclosure is a
objection.
former staffer, and I will be referencing those articles in some written questions. I consulted my technology guru, Scott Adams, in the form of Dilbert, going back 21 years ago, and when you took the shrink wrap off of a piece of software that you bought, you were automatically agreeing to be bound by the terms and conditions. So we've gone a long way from taking the shrink wrap off of an app, but I don't know that things have changed all that much. And I guess, does Facebook have a position, a position that you recommend for elements of a company's terms and conditions that you encourage consumers to look at before they click on the acceptance?
Congressman, yes. I think that it's really important for the service that people understand what they're doing and signing up for and how the service works. We have laid out all of what we do in the terms of service because that's what is legally required of us.
Let me just ask you, because we're going to run short on time, have you laid out for people what it would be indicative of a good actor versus a less than good actor in someone who's developed one of these applications?
Congressman, yes, we have a developer terms of service, which is separate from the normal terms of service for individuals using the service.
Is the average consumer able to determine what elements would indicate poor or weak consumer protections just by their evaluation of the terms and conditions? Do you think that's possible?
Congressman, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, can the average person, the average layperson, look at the terms and conditions and make the evaluation, is this a strong enough protection for me to enter into this arrangement? Look, I'm as bad as anyone else. I see an app, I want it, I download it, I breeze through the stuff, just take me to the good stuff in the app. But if a consumer wanted to know, could they know?
Congressman, I think you're raising an important point, which is that I think if someone wanted to know, they could. But I think that a lot of people probably just accept terms of service without taking the time to read through it. I view our responsibility not as just legally complying with laying it out and getting that consent, but actually trying to make sure that people understand what's happening throughout the product. That's why every single time that you share something on Facebook or one of our services, right there is a control in line where you control who you want to share with. Because I don't just think that this is about a terms of service, it's contextual. You want to present people with the information about what they might be doing and give them the relevant controls in line at the time that they're making those decisions, not just have it be in the background sometime or up front, make a one-time decision.
Yeah, let me move on to something else. Mr. Pallone brought up the issue of he wanted to see more regulation. We actually passed a bill through this committee last Congress dealing with data breach notification, not so much for Facebook, but for the credit card breaches. A good bill. Many of the friends on the other side of the dais voted against it, but it was Ms. Blackburn's bill, and I think it's one we should consider again in light of what's going on here. But you also signed a consent decree back in 2011. And, you know, when I read through that consent decree, it's pretty explicit. And there is a significant fine of $40,000 per violation per day, and if you've got 2 billion users, you can see how those fines would mount up pretty quickly. So in the course of your audit, are you extrapolating data for the people at the Federal Trade Commission for the terms and conditions of the consent decree?
That is, I'm not sure what you mean by extrapolating data.
Well, you've referenced there are audits that are ongoing. Are you making that information from those audits available to our friends at the agency at the Federal Trade Commission?
Congressman, as you know, the FTC is investigating this, and we are certainly going to be complying with them and working with them on that investigation.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to our committee. I want to follow up on what my friend from North Texas talked about on his cartoon. Next month, the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, goes into effect in the European Union. The GDPR is pretty prescriptive on how companies treat consumer data, and it makes it clear that consumers need to be in control of their own data. And Mr. Zuckerberg, Facebook has committed to abiding to these consumer protections in Europe, and you face large penalties if they don't. In recent days, you've said that Facebook intends to make the same settings available to users everywhere, not only in Europe. Did I understand correctly that Facebook would not only make the same settings available, but that will make the same protections available to Americans that they will the Europeans?
Yes, Congressman, all the same controls will be available around the world.
Okay. And you commit today that Facebook will extend the same protections to Americans that European users will receive under the GDPR?
Yes, Congressman. We believe that everyone around the world deserves good privacy controls. We've had a lot of these controls in place for years. The GDPR requires us to do a few more things, and we're going to extend that to the world.
There are many requirements in the GDPR, so I'm just going to focus on a few of them. The GDPR requires that the company's request for user consent to be requested in a clear and concise way using language that is understandable. and be clearly distinguishable from other pieces of information, including terms and conditions. How will that requirement be implemented in the United States?
Congressman, we're going to put at the top of everyone's app when they sign in a tool that walks people through the settings and gives people the choices and asks them to make decisions on how they want their settings set.
One of the GDPR's requirements is data portability. Users must be permitted to request a full copy of their information and be able to share that information with any companies that they want to. I know Facebook allows users in the U.S. to download their Facebook data. Does Facebook plan to use the currently existing ability of users to download their Facebook data as the means to comply with the GDPR's data portability requirement?
Congressman, I think we may be updating it a little bit, but as you say, we've had the ability to download your information for years now, and people have the ability to see everything that they have in Facebook, to take that out, delete their account, and move their data anywhere that they want.
Does that download file include all the information Facebook has collected about any given individual? In other words, if I download my Facebook information, is there other information accessible to you within Facebook that I wouldn't see on that document, such as browsing history or the inferences that Facebook has drawn from users for advertising purposes?
Congressman, I believe that all of your information is in that file.
Okay. GDPR also gives users the right to object to the processing of their personal data for marketing purposes, which, according to Facebook's website, includes custom micro-targeted audiences for advertising. Will the same right be available to Facebook users in the United States, and how will that be implemented?
Congressman, I'm not sure how we're going to implement that yet. Let me follow up with you on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, as a small, Facebook conducted a couple of years ago an effort in our district in Houston for our small businesses, and it was one of the most successful outreach I've seen. So I appreciate that outreach to helping small businesses use Facebook to market their products. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn, for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, I tell you, I think your cozy community, as Dr. Mark Jameson recently said, is beginning to look a whole lot like The Truman Show, where people's identities and relationships are made available to people that they don't know. And then that data is crunched and it is used, and they're fully unaware of this. So I've got to ask you, I think what we're getting to here is, who owns the virtual you? Who owns your presence online? And I'd like for you to comment. Who do you think owns an individual's presence online? Who owns their virtual you? Is it you or is it them?
Congresswoman, I believe that everyone owns their own content online. And that's the first line of our terms of service. If you read it, says that.
And where does privacy rank as a corporate value for Facebook?
Congresswoman, giving people control of their information and how they want to set their privacy is foundational to the whole service. It's not just a kind of an add-on feature or something we have to comply with.
Well,
the reality is, if you have a photo, if you just think about this in your day-to-day life.
I can't let you filibuster right now. A constituent of mine who's a benefits manager brought up a great question in a meeting at her company last week. And she said, you know, healthcare, you've got HIPAA, you've got Gramm-Leach-Bliley, you've got the Fair Credit Reporting Act. These are all compliance documents for privacy. For other sectors of the industry, she was stunned that there are no privacy documents that apply to you all. And we've heard people say that, you know, and you've said you're considering maybe you need more regulation. What we think is we need for you to look at new legislation. And you're hearing there'll be more bills brought out in the next few weeks, but we have had a bill, the Browser Act, and I'm certain that you're familiar with this. It's bipartisan, and I thank Mr.